Welcome to Geopolitical Files. This is where we go beyond press briefings and official narratives to examine how power is actually used, how conflicts are shaped in private, and how decisions made in closed rooms ripple across the world. You're looking for noise. This isn't it. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, Caracas did not look like a battlefield. The city was asleep. But somewhere far from Venezuela, inside a secured room in the United States, the president and senior military commanders were seated in silence, watching live operational feeds update second by second. A single location in Caracas filled the screens. A house, a room, a moving clock. This was not a drill. This was not a simulation. According to this reconstructed intelligence scenario, this was the moment a sitting president was about to be taken, without an invasion, without a coup, and without a war. High above the Caribbean, aircraft without call signs were already moving. Their routes had been finalized weeks earlier. Their transponders were dark. Below them, one of the most heavily defended airspaces in South America remained unaware that it was already compromised. In Caracas, Nicolás Maduro was asleep. He did not know that the systems protecting him, layered with foreign intelligence, air defenses, and elite guards, were no longer synchronized. He did not know that hesitation had already entered the chain of command, and he did not know that someone inside his own security environment had quietly confirmed something that made this night possible: stillness. This documentary is not official history. It is a reconstructed operation, built from public indictments, investigative reporting, and known U.S. military doctrine. It doesn't ask whether such an operation should happen. It asks something far more unsettling.
We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend.
In the modern world, how does power actually fall? Because what happened next, according to this scenario, did not begin with explosions. It began with silence. And by the time Caracas realized something was wrong, the night was already over.
Donald Trump has pulled the trigger. After months of build-up, after months of isolated airstrikes, the U.S. president has toppled Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro.
To understand how this night became possible, we must go back years, long before helicopters lifted off, and long before the lights went out in Caracas.
They have said that Nicolás Maduro is a narco-terrorist, that he's not the leader of Venezuela, he's not the president of Venezuela, he can call himself that.
The former dictator of Venezuela is now in a New York jail cell.
Does that mean the United States can just kidnap and hold hostage the president, plunder the natural resources? You know, again, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. So it's clear that this is about oil, that this is about power, this is about a Trump.
In 2005, Venezuela expelled the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Publicly, the decision was framed as an act of sovereignty. Privately, it removed international oversight. What followed was not disorder, but organization. Over the next decade, Venezuela evolved into a hybrid system where political authority, military logistics, intelligence enforcement, and criminal revenue became interconnected. When Hugo Chavez died in 2013, Nicolás Maduro inherited more than the presidency. He inherited this system. Cuban intelligence officers embedded themselves deep inside Venezuela's security institutions. Russian air defense systems reinforced the sky. Chinese radar networks expanded early warning coverage. On paper, the regime appeared fortified, layered, defended, and resilient. But internally, the system functioned like a bureaucracy. Schedules were repeated, routes were reused. Security rituals became symbolic rather than adaptive. And in every bureaucratic system, predictability slowly replaces vigilance. That predictability would become the opening. Every closed system eventually develops a flaw. Not ideology, not courage, proximity. According to multiple investigative accounts referenced in both scripts, U.S. intelligence maintained at least one human source with legitimate access to Maduro's security environment. Not a defector sneaking secrets across borders. Not a dramatic spy, a functionary, someone whose presence raised no alarms because it belonged there. In this reconstruction, we refer to him as the insider. What the insider provided was not classified blueprints or future predictions. He provided confirmation, which security locations were genuinely hardened, and which existed for appearance, which guard rotations were enforced, and which were ceremonial, which defenses were maintained, and which existed only on paper. This kind of intelligence does not predict events. It removes uncertainty. And once uncertainty is reduced to a narrow margin, planning becomes execution. By 2020, the United States Department of Justice publicly indicted Nicolás Maduro on narco-terrorism charges.
Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro, has been charged with narco-terrorism after being captured by U.S. forces.
In an effort to flood the United States with cocaine.
He is a fugitive head of this cartel who has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel.
Maduro and his other defendants have betrayed the Venezuelan people and corrupted Venezuela's institutions.
On narco-terrorism charges, alleging that elements of the Venezuelan state were used to traffic cocaine into the United States. Sanctions followed, bounties followed, diplomatic isolation intensified, but pressure alone does not remove power. Before force, there is almost always an offer. Multiple diplomatic statements and media reports suggest that Maduro was presented with quiet off-ramps over time. Exile, negotiated exits, legal arrangements. These offers are rarely public, and details vary across accounts.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolás Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight.
And details vary across accounts. What matters for this reconstruction is not which version is perfect, but that by late 2025, the off-ramps ended. At that point, the question changed. It was no longer whether Maduro would leave office politically. It became whether he could be removed physically. That decision activated a different machine. Modern military operations are not triggered by urgency. They wait for stillness. According to this reconstructed scenario, U.S. surveillance, air, sea, cyber, and human, narrowed its focus to a single variable, predictability, where Maduro slept when he stayed in one place, when his movement patterns stopped shifting. Late in the planning phase, confirmation arrived through the insider. Maduro would remain inside a secured location in Caracas for a limited window. He would not rotate locations. He would not relocate. He would stay still. That window made the operation executable. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, Venezuelan time, the operation began. Not with explosions, but with absence. Modern air defense systems are designed to watch the sky, not the ground. Aircraft flying extremely low can exploit terrain masking and the curvature of the earth. This is established military doctrine. As stealth aircraft moved into position, Venezuela's radar picture remained intact, which meant it was already wrong. Moments before the helicopters reached Caracas, large sections of the city lost power. Officials later attributed this to technical failures and possible cyber interference. What matters is not the cause. What matters is the effect. Without power, communication falters. Without communication, command hesitates. And hesitation is fatal to coordinated defense. High above, stealth aircraft moved first. Not to dominate the battlefield, but to destabilize it. Russian-made air defense systems activated. Chinese radar searched for targets. What they detected was not false, but misleading. Precision strikes hit key military nodes, command centers, air bases, infrastructure tied to rapid response. The objective was not destruction, It was overload. While Venezuelan defenses focused outward and upward, the real operation moved underneath. Witnesses later described aircraft flying impossibly low, barely audible until they were overhead. Inside this blind zone, the extraction force advanced. Elite special operations forces deployed across multiple access points simultaneously. Rooftops, courtyards, and corridors. The Presidential Guard responded immediately, but without centralized coordination, resistance collapsed quickly. This moment was not improvised. According to this reconstruction, the assault team had rehearsed inside a full-scale replica of the target location, door by door, hallway by hallway, until movement became reflex. When the breach occurred, speed was absolute. Flash grenades disoriented defenders. Cutting tools defeated reinforced doors. Maduro attempted to reach a safe room. He failed. Within minutes, Nicolás Maduro and his wife were physically secured. Within minutes, Nicolás Maduro and his wife were physically secured. This was not a negotiation. It was detention. Specialized helicopters lifted off immediately. Mid-air refueling extended their range. The aircraft never paused. They never lingered. By 5 o'clock in the morning, the helicopters were gone. According to this scenario, by sunrise, the president of Venezuela was no longer in Venezuela. No invasion followed. No occupation began.
Mr. Maduro and his wife Celia Flores had been captured in the capital Caracas.
China is deeply shocked and strongly condemns the US blatant use of force against a sovereign state and action against its president.
Does that mean the United States can just kidnap and hold hostage the president, plunder the natural resources? Again, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. So it's clear that this is about oil, that this is about power, this is about a Trump.
Publicly, the reactions were predictable: condemnation, outrage, sovereignty. Privately, they were surgical. Moscow studied why its air defenses never fought. Beijing questioned what silence meant for credibility. Havana asked the most dangerous question of all: who inside the system stopped lying? Because Cuba didn't lose a headline that night. It lost certainty, and certainty is survival. By morning, Caracas looked unchanged. Buildings stood. Flags flew. Streets filled with traffic, but power had already moved. This reconstruction is not about helicopters or aircraft. It is about access, about how modern power rarely collapses from outside pressure alone, but erodes from within when systems become predictable and someone close enough decides to stop lying. In the modern world, authority does not always end with explosions. Sometimes it ends quietly. In the dark, what you've just watched was not an isolated operation. It was a signal, because while one extraction fades into silence, a far larger confrontation is taking shape in plain sight. Next week, on Geopolitical Files, we follow the armadas gathering in the Gulf and the war plans being whispered behind closed doors. We'll break down how the United States could strike Iran, how Iran is preparing to strike back, and why a single miscalculation could send global oil markets into shock, hitting economies far beyond the Middle East. This isn't speculation, it's contingency. If you want to understand what governments won't say out loud, before events force the truth into the open, subscribe now. Because in geopolitics, the next move is always made before the world is told it happened. This is Geopolitical Files. Stay vigilant